I guess maybe I should talk about a little follow-up from last week.
Yeah, we should probably start with follow-up.
Yeah. Apparently there's according to John Syracuse, there's a order of things. But I guess that's specific to his show, or one particular show of his that I listen to. So this is our show. We can do follow-up at the end if we wanted to. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but I kind of like follow-up at the beginning, though, just because it's fresh on my mind.
Oh, no, I feel like follow-up at the beginning is the correct place for it because it's leftover, it's following up with a previous show. So in chronological, as if you were going to do topics in chronological order, I guess it's a way to recall. I don't know. It makes sense at the beginning of the show. But I'm just saying, it's our show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the nod to being rebellious.
I'm sure you do. So my follow-up from last week was about the Sturgis motorcycle rally. I'm sure you saw the numbers I posted in our notes.
Yep.
250,000 coronavirus cases are linked to that. I guess it was a week-long rally or a 10-day rally, motorcycle rally in South Dakota last month. And those 250,000 cases, they're saying being reported between August 2nd and September 2nd. That would account for 19% of the cases in the United States during that time frame. It's a lot. It's a lot from just one event. And the numbers that the number that really surprised me from this article, from The Economist, was the estimated healthcare costs for treating all those cases is $12.2 billion. And which breaks down to, if they paid the attendees to not go, it would have been, they could have each, been paid $46,000 not to go, and that would equate to that $12.2 billion.
It's amazing how quick healthcare costs rack up.
Sorry, I read that wrong. 26,000, and it was it's average of $46,000 per COVID. The $12.2 billion is based on an average cost of $46,000 per treatment per COVID case.
Yeah, I was about to correct the. It was the estimation of paying each of the individuals $26,000 not to attend.
Yeah, that's still a lot of money.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, that's at the lower income margin range. That's a year's salary for some people.
Now I'm just thinking it's like minimum wage. It's like around a year's salary at minimum wage, assuming you can work 40 hours every week.
Is that what it comes out to now? What is the current minimum wage, I guess, is a better question.
It's close to it. I can't remember.
Yeah, let's look it up real quick. So the current minimum wage is $7.25 an hour.
That's lower than I was thinking.
Well, we've seen so many places talk about they're raising the pay scales for entry-level employees, but it's not a mandated minimum wage.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick calculation because now I'm curious.
It's 15,000. Minimum wage is $15,000 a year. It's $15,080.
Yeah. So if you were thinking about attending the rally, it would have been in your best interest not to go and get paid to not go.
Right.
Had they implemented such a program.
Yes. If you made minimum wage in a year, it's $11,000 more than you make annually. Wow, I feel bad for not knowing that minimum wage was that low.
That it does seem lower than what it should be currently. It seems like I remember. So, well, all right. If we go way back when I first started working, minimum wage was $4.75 an hour.
Mine was $5.15.
And I at least remember getting up over $5 before I got out of having to pay attention to minimum wage. But still, I mean, that's a very insignificant increase over 25 years.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about it, like the concept of having a single minimum wage is, I think, too simple. You've got you have some industries that don't make minimum wage; they make below minimum wage because particularly I'm thinking of food service industry. You've got wait staff that makes well under minimum wage, but they rely on tipping, on receiving tips. So that's one thing, and then it's like, I don't know. I think the concept of paying people a living like a wage that you can live on is interesting, but like the idea of minimum wage is, I think, just too simple to, because you've got some folks that are, I think about the high school kids that work at the creamery in Homewood. I was like, I mean, they're making $7.25. They're making $7.25 an hour. That's for scooping ice cream. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Because as a teenager, you generally don't have that many expenses. But if you're a single mom or a single dad trying to earn a living, I mean, you can't. Shoot, if you're just a single person, not even, no kids, $15,000 a year, that's not easy to live on.
Well, and it's difficult to be able to quantify that in a way that you could do across the board with national mandates as well, because the cost of living varies so much region to region, city to city, that in order to enact a standard, you have to choose something that would be... I can understand where the minimum idea came from, because it's like, all right, we recognize that the cost of living in, Birmingham, Alabama versus Los Angeles, California is drastically different. So what we can do is say that there's a minimum that you must pay, that if we take every region in the U.S. and average it out as much as we can, maybe even based on some, weighting for population density, which I don't think is done, but that's beside the point. I can see where minimum wage as a concept made more sense than trying to do a living wage that would have to vary region to region.
Well, I've got to imagine that the idea of a minimum wage is much older than life as we know it. And I imagine it's one of those things that came along with the 40-hour work week and not allowing children to work. But I can see where it's like, if you're going to hire, most places, 16 or 18, someone has to be 16 or 18 years old to work. I got to say, it makes sense. It's like you can't pay a 16 or 18-year-old less than $7.25. It's just, not okay for the workforce. So,
I mean, I would certainly say that pay inequality across the board has been a long-standing topic that needs to be addressed.
Oh, I agree.
I just don't know how to address it. And I can come up with all sorts of ideas that sound great to me, but I don't think any of them are really something that could be done with any practical or meaningful way. I would expect that you would have to almost find a way to provide an algorithm that each individual township or maybe you do it at the state level, but I think there's too much variation within the state. But you'd have to provide a formula for, in your area, this is the minimum wage. And given the lack of competence in government in general, I'm not so sure that would be implemented very well.
Yeah, I've got to imagine that working out in the garlic farms in California between LA and San Francisco is very different than the city of San Francisco. So.
I think most of California is different than the city of San Francisco.
Oof, that's an expensive city.
At some point, I probably ought to pay attention, because with when I think of California, obviously I think of San Francisco, Cupertino areas because of my trips out there. But I'm curious now. It might be something that I pay attention to and look up, and probably not. What the difference in the cost of living between Sacramento and San Francisco and LA are.
Oh, I don't even know, because it's like, so San Francisco, the city of San Francisco is one thing. The surrounding areas are another, and it's just like the more you got to imagine that there are people that live out and around the water, that I guess that are going to be like as far as you would live away from the city of San Francisco, or just the Bay. Let's just say the Bay Area, because there's a lot that happens in San Jose. I think San Jose is a bigger city than San Francisco, or a more populous city than San Francisco.
It is at least physically larger, I believe.
Yeah. That's why housing, particularly in San Francisco, is so high, is because they just ran out of space, and there aren't high rises like you would see in Manhattan. Manhattan's also very expensive, but there was a limited amount of space, and they just went straight up. So still expensive, but it's been a while that San Francisco surpassed New York City as far as cost of housing. So I just remember looking out there and like where to live, because I had aspirations of moving out there, and it was like there were some spots that were like an hour's drive from San Francisco. It's not necessarily that it was actually physically farther away. It was just that it was farther away from a bridge that would cross the bay to get to San Francisco. I thought that was interesting. I mean, it's totally an obvious thing, but I was interested in that particular, the geographic bound, or the geography limitations that affected the price of housing.
That makes sense. I remember it being kind of striking that if you were to go one direction, you had multiple ways in and out of the city, but if you went another direction, you had one, basically. I think there were two, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same kind of thing that you see around here, where in order to get from south of Birmingham north, you have basically two routes. And I wonder how much of that influences housing costs with some of the regions that are more accessible, even though they're not really that accessible, because no matter what, it's going to take you 30 minutes to get from one place to another in the city, even though it's not geographically that distant. It's just that there aren't that many routes that will connect you to whatever thoroughfare you need to hit to get to the other part of the city. And it's all because of the I hate calling them mountains, because they're really not mountains, but they're mountains.
I mean, technically they're mountains. There's a very low threshold for, the definition of a mountain is not a lot.
Yeah, I know technically that it reaches whatever elevation limit is required for it to be considered a mountain, but it's a hill.
It's only 1,000 feet. Only 1,000 feet above sea level, and it's a mountain.
Well, that makes sense. It explains why a lot of places can get away with calling things mountains when they're not.
See, the one that bothers me more than that are lakes versus ponds, because there isn't a standard. Like, you can say if it's 1,000 feet over sea level, it's a mountain, and I guess below that it's a hill. But but hill might be more colloquial than having a specific definition. But lake and a pond, there's no specific definition. There's a general guideline that says lakes typically affect the environment, affect the climate, and ponds are affected by the climate.
Is it the same general idea between creeks and streams and rivers?
So that's another one. There's no distinction between a creek, river, stream, brook. I can't think of any other flowing bodies of water.
I know growing up, we had land outside of in Harris County, outside of Hamilton, Georgia. And it was pretty nice because we had 8 acres and it was adjacent to property owned by Georgia Pacific. So they owned it strictly for the purpose of eventually they were going to cut down trees for pulpwood. So it was basically just reserving land, right? And I don't remember how many acres they had, but our land was adjacent to it, and then that land basically extended up against, it was a creek for all intents and purposes, but it was a flowing creek. And it's interesting that there's a distinction there, because we had I guess you could call it a tributary. We had a little creek behind our house that was small. It would typically have a little bit of flowing water in it at any given time, but it fed into the larger creek as you followed it down the pathway. And there was one section on that particular set of our piece of property that Georgia Pacific owned, where it got pretty wide, and there was a dam built to retain a certain amount of water prior to that, and there was always a little bit of overflow. I don't know if that has continued since we've had some changes in rain patterns and everything else, but typically speaking, it was wide enough that it would take some effort to swim from one side to the other, and it was flowing enough that there was always a strong enough current that would take some effort. But it was still something that we very much considered a creek. It never even crossed our minds to think of it as even approaching the size of a river, because to us, a river was something that you were going to really have to look to see the other side, whereas this one, you could see the other side all day long. It's just it would take some effort to get across it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me because I feel like I've paddled rivers that were smaller than creeks, like by name. So because there's no specific definition, I guess it's just like it's up to the person who's naming the body of water. I don't know. I've even looked to see if there's any like general sort of guidelines. Not really. Nothing official, but and I guess that would be for the United States. Same thing for lakes. There's nothing really official.
It kind of feeds into one of the things I've always thought was kind of strange. The Cahaba, of course, is considered a river, and to me, every time I pass it, I look at it and it's like that's a creek at best. Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely. I mean it's a long river, but it's definitely like if you look at any portion of it, like you come across any portion of it, it mostly looks like a creek. Whereas like something like the Coosa River or the Alabama River, like the Coosa River, I would say looks like a river, but it's really a really small river. It's long, but it's mostly a really small river. Whereas like the Alabama River, it's a decently sized river. And if you think about like the Mississippi River, it's a big river. It's where we grew up, we weren't far from the Chattahoochee, and for the most part, width-wise, it doesn't seem like it would be a river, but the sheer volume of water that flows through it, I could certainly see classification as a river from that perspective. because the currents were known to be enough that you definitely did not want to get stuck in one. You could get sucked under, and they may or may not ever find the body. So I wonder to an extent if some of it has to do with just volume of water that typically flows through it from not necessarily a guideline perspective, but I wonder if that's not something that plays into the idea of whether you name it a creek or a river.
I think so. I've always thought of creeks being quite rocky, where you would see obvious rocks where you could just like step across, you could get your way to and from various sides of the, one side of the river to the other by stepping on rocks. That's been a thing in my head. But yeah, I don't know. There's, I guess if you think about the largest flowing bodies of water, such as the Amazon River, the Mississippi River, the Nile River, they're all rivers, and you would think that creeks and streams and brooks are progressively smaller. Maybe brooks are bigger than streams, but smaller than creeks. That's how I organize it in my mind.
Yeah, I think I've always looked more at depth. If I can stand in it, it's probably not a river. And I'm sure that's the wrong way to look at it. But to me, for it to be a river, it's got to be deep enough that I can't just stand in it all the way across.
Because that's not the Cahaba.
Well, it's not the Flint River either.
No.
And we used to tube down the Flint all the time.
I was going to ask, is the Chattahoochee the river from Deliverance?
I think it's supposed to be. I don't remember if it was actually used or not.
Saw that movie in my 30s.
You should have a far better recollection of it than me. Then the last time I saw it, I was easily in my 20s, if not even earlier than that.
Well, it's definitely dated, but it's worth a watch. Like understanding the context of the time, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Oh, one of the things I was going to add was about lakes, and where the lake, like I said, lakes is the one that bothers me most because of there's so many things that I feel like are called lakes that are really ponds, and it makes me think of the Great Lakes, which I don't think are lakes at all. They're really just inland freshwater seas.
Interesting. I could see that though. I mean, I haven't been to the Great Lakes, but I'm hearing about different things where, or listening to the effect of the lakes on the surrounding areas. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, they're massive. It's a lot of water. And actually came across some information about Lake Baikal. It's the surface area of Lake Baikal is significantly smaller than Lake Superior, but the amount of water that lake holds, because it's a very deep lake, is significantly higher than Lake Superior. I thought that was really interesting. And it's the only lake with a freshwater seal. I really didn't think we were going to talk about geography so much today.
I didn't either. Yeah, it's honestly, it's one of those things where I don't think we really pay attention to show notes. It's more a matter of just toss some things in, and then if we lose track of something to talk about, we have something to reference. It kind of tends to be how most of our conversations would go pre-pandemic anyway, so I kind of expected that.
Yeah, it's true. Did you want to talk about anything that Apple talked about today?
I think so, but I want to hold that.
Okay.
Because I'm more curious, did you pay much attention to the opening weekend for the Premier League?
I saw that Arsenal got a 3-0 win over Fulham at Craven Cottage. I saw your notes, and that's about it.
All right, so I put the notes in because I just thought it was interesting. So let me pull them up real quick. I don't really care about all the strange random records that people seem to be fascinated with. So, like the first one, or one of the things with Salah scoring, he was the first Liverpool player to score in 4 consecutive seasons as far as the opening match day. That's fine. I don't really care. Like, to me, that's just a dumb record.
That would fit in like in a Major League Baseball sort of stat.
So what I did find interesting, though, is he scored a hat trick in the opening match. And that took, apparently tracking the number of hat tricks that a team has scored in the Premier League is a record thing, or a statistic thing anyway. And the reason I wanted to mention it is because that makes Liverpool the highest, or has the highest number of hat tricks in the Premier League, beating Arsenal, which is the only reason it stuck out to me. So apparently you guys have had a total of 39 hat tricks in the history of the club in the Premier League, and with Salah's hat trick, we have 40.
Oh.
And because of our conversation, I liked it, and so I had to bring it up.
That's I would too if it was the other way around.
So I did watch. To me, our match was really strange, and I'm going to back up for a moment. How are you still a YouTube TV subscriber?
I suspended my account over the summer when they bumped up the price $15 a month.
Okay,
from 50 to 65.
Yeah, so I had subscribed and was pretty happy with it. I love the UI. I think they probably have the kind of the best approach to how to handle things that I've seen so far. But as soon as they went from 50 to 65, I just canceled. Just, nope, done. Because I have this threshold in my mind of what I'm willing to pay for TV given how little I watch it. And $50 hit a good threshold. 51 does not. Like it's very much $50 and below. All right, I'll consider it. So I spent a good portion of Saturday morning trying to figure out how I could now watch Premier League matches without having a TV subscription. And it's absolutely abysmal, the state of trying to do anything in the U.S. to watch anything that is not your basic ABC, NBC, Fox, I'm missing one, but whoever the other one is, general broadcast networks. If you want to watch football, just ESPN all day long, whatever. You're mostly covered, right?
Yeah.
So last year, NBC Sports had the Premier League Pass, and it was, I think, $49 for the year when I bought it, which worked out relatively well. You know, I don't really care about the other matches, but it was nice to occasionally check in on what City was doing, or Arsenal, or United, whoever. But it gave me access to all of the Liverpool games. Or if it didn't, I had access to whatever one-off game was covered not under that umbrella, through just YouTube TV or whatever else I had. And so I looked at, all right, Sling has a good price point, but they don't carry pretty much anything for NBC. NBC rebranded their streaming service to something called Peacock.
Yeah, I saw that.
Stupid name. I get where it comes from. Stupid name, but whatever. And with the Premier League Pass, I got an email saying, hey, your pass will not be renewed. We're rebranding it. You just do Peacock Premium, and you get basically the same thing. And so Saturday morning, I said, all right, well, I can get a 7-day free trial of Peacock Premium. Let's do it. I couldn't watch any fucking game.
Oh, no.
Well, I take that back. There were West Ham I could watch, and there was a Tottenham game that was scheduled that I could watch, but I couldn't watch anything that I was interested in, and I couldn't find any place to view it.
That's just garbage.
So I immediately canceled that, and I think the 7-day trial ends Saturday. It doesn't matter; it will not be renewed for sure. And I don't understand. Like, if you go to their website, NBC Sports, if you look at their gold packages for following different sports, the Premier League Pass is no longer offered there. If you find a reference to it, it says reference or provides a reference to Peacock Premium, and Peacock Premium doesn't give you shit. So NBC can go to hell.
This is not the. I don't think this is the first time this has happened for trying to watch the Premier League in the United States. I can remember at one point you could watch all the matches on Fox. This was 15 years ago. I remember watching all the matches on the Fox Soccer channel, and it was really good. Like, I really loved it because to watch all the matches, and then they had this great recap show that basically showed almost the highlights from the entire weekend. I loved that as well. I really felt like I watched Arsenal matches, and then I watched the recap show, and I felt like I knew what was going on in the entire Premier League. And I haven't since I can't remember who picked it up after Fox Soccer Channel, but I remember watching all the Premier League watching Premier League matches on FSC, and then watching Champions League on ESPN, because at the time ESPN had the rights to the Champions League matches, and that was like I feel like that was just so perfect because I had access to both of those things. I was paying for cable internet and a telephone, and it was like $30 for each of those. It was totally worth it. And now there's just, there's no good way to watch live sports without cable. It's not just the Premier League, but all the leagues and all the sports are in bed with the cable companies, and going to stay that way until the dam breaks, until cable comes into the 21st century. So I don't know. It feels unfair to have to pay X amount of money to subsidize all the channels that you just don't want.
So I have found what I think is a decent enough alternative for the rest of the season. So here we have Spectrum or AT&T you can choose for internet, and AT&T's internet is abysmal, and I don't understand why anybody would choose it, because they're advertising 25 meg per second is great, and fiber, and blah, blah, blah. And so that leaves us with Charter or Spectrum, or I don't even remember what the current company name is. When I signed up, it was Bright House Networks. So
it's Spectrum now.
Yeah, and so I have internet through them anyway. And so I've noticed that I had an offer where I could choose 10 channels plus get live TV, and it was $20 a month plus the broadcast fee. And so I looked at what channels I could choose, and both NBC and NBC Sports were, or I think it was CNBC and NBC Sports. Either way, NBC Sports was part of what I could choose for those 10 channels. So I went ahead and signed up. And this I didn't find out until later, or I would have tried it before the match. So I'm hoping that this weekend I will get to watch the full match and not be limited to like a 35-minute free trial stream. Yeah, I got to watch basically the first half, and then I just had to pay attention to the live blog after that.
That's infuriating.
Yeah. But so we'll see. We'll see how well that works, and I may turn around and cancel that and be annoyed and just say, all right, I'm done. I'll just watch whatever recap and YouTube clips I can later.
Yeah, I for a long time I had a link that had a link to a website. It was just an IP address, a static IP address, I suppose. And it had just a list of like every sport that was currently being live broadcast. And the the resolution was terrible, and you had to sit in front of your computer and watch it. But there's a few years that's how I watch my Arsenal matches. Just a bootleg feed.
What I would love for one of two things to happen. As much as I dislike any company having a huge monopoly over pretty much everything, I would be more than happy for ESPN to just buy NBC and then dismantle everything except for the sports piece and roll it in. And by ESPN, of course, I mean Disney.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
That's fine. Whatever. Let's get rid of NBC. Let's crush them into non-existence and let somebody who knows what they're doing handle the sports piece. I would be fine with that. What I would really like to see happen, though, is I would rather Liverpool has LFC TV. I would rather see them just create a channel that I could access through the Apple TV, pay them $5-10 a month, whatever, and I could just get any Liverpool game and pay it directly to the club.
Yeah, I would love to. I was just even thinking, like, I'd pay $20 a month just to be able to watch every single Arsenal match.
Yeah, I probably would too. Off the top of my head, it seems like that might reach a threshold where I would say, maybe not. But at the same time, I would expect there to be enough additional content that you don't typically get to see beyond just the matches. Be it interviews or just some behind-the-scenes footage or whatever. Yeah, I could probably see up to 20.
Yeah, and the reason I picked 20, it's $20 doesn't feel like a lot of money for that kind of thing, because I was paying $50. I was getting so much more content, but I wasn't. I was really paying $50 to watch Arsenal play in the Premier League. I watched American Horror Story. That was it. And there were many times where I thought, I could watch this thing, and I just never, I never did. And part of it is because I've had family members have shared logins with me. So right now I have access to Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, and Apple TV Plus. And so there's no shortage of content, none whatsoever. Like, I can find something. It's really funny because every once in a while I will find something that's not on any of those services. I'll go look at Plex and I'll look at your library, and it's there. I think there's only been one time I looked and I was like, it wasn't there, and I'm just like, Plex is always the backup. So always comes through.
Yeah, So I took stock of what I am subscribed to during the course of this dilemma. I have a Netflix account, I have Disney Plus, I have ESPN Plus, which I only recently subscribed to because they offered me a discount because of the Disney Plus relationship. And I decided I would do it ahead of football season because I do at least follow the Cincinnati Bearcats as well. And then I have Amazon Prime, and then of course Plex. Well, Amazon Prime I've never really thought of as a place to go for video content because honestly, I've just paid for it for the free or reduced cost shipping, and it more than pays for itself over time with as much stuff as we end up ordering. So I've never really taken advantage of the Prime Video options. And then Apple TV Plus. But between those, like, everything that I want to watch is pretty much covered because I don't care about TV shows for the most part. If there's a TV show I decide I want to watch, either it's one that I will go buy or it's one that is produced by like Netflix or Apple at this point. And I really haven't watched anything from Apple TV Plus. I need to pay attention. There are a couple that I really liked the sound of, and I just haven't taken the time to watch them. But realistically, I just don't have enough time to consume more content than I do. And so the main thing that I'm after is I want to watch Liverpool play and I want to watch Cincinnati play. And that's it. And I would really like to have one central place where I could go watch those games, pay whatever fee for those games, and not care about the rest.
That makes sense. Because I mean that's what everybody wants, and the cable companies don't want to give us that. It's it's like we'll give you 100 channels, but we want $65 for it.
Well, but that's the biggest problem. Is it's not just the cable companies; it's the internet TV companies have decided the cable model fits them better.
I'm lumping them in with. I'm calling them at this point. I'm calling their services cable companies. I mean, I'm lumping them in with the cable companies. I chose that $65. I think you can get cable packages for less than $65, but I chose that $65 because that's what YouTube TV went to. They added 14 channels, and not any of them are interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only redeeming quality that they had was the interface.
Yes.
And as soon as they crossed that threshold, it's like, no, I would rather deal with a subpar interface and pay half the cost.
Yes. So that's... Yeah, I think I might try Hulu Live. I had them once, and I got rid of them because they didn't support my television. They did some upgrades and didn't support my television. But they also... over the summer, they did something on the back end, and I would launch the application. I would try to play a show. It would show the progress bar. It was the kind of progress bar that's not a progress bar. It would fill up and then restart and fill up, and like that, like really fast. It indicate that it was. And it would lie to you saying, I'm doing something, and it wouldn't. So I'd go out of the show, and it would be responsive, and then I'd try to go right back into the show, and then the application would crash. And it was like that for about a week. And I was in the middle of watching Lost, and I couldn't watch it because of something. I think it was specific to Hulu specific to Hulu on Roku. And I went through all of the troubleshooting steps on their website, opened up a ticket with support, and finally they were like, I don't know what's going on. And finally somebody was like, yeah, we've got a problem, and we don't have a time frame for a resolution, but please keep checking. So anyway, because the Hulu worked on the iOS application. It worked on the web interface, or in the browser. It was interesting, but it was just like made me kind of not want to go further, because I remember at the end of one of the support emails, somebody said, "Oh, just so you know, you can get a HBO Max and a Disney Plus subscription within Hulu, and it ends up being less expensive than if you buy them all, pay for them a la carte." And I was just like, well, then I'd have 3 services that wouldn't work if I did that. I like the idea, it's a cool idea, but not if that's going to happen. So
yeah, I looked at Hulu. My biggest problem with them has always been that even in the paid tiers, you're paying for less ads, not no ads. And I don't know why, but as a general principle, that bothers me quite a bit.
Oh, I agree. I think so. I think there's you can get a base subscription to Hulu, and there are ads, and then you can pay like $2 or $3 more for no differences in contents, just no ads, and they also have that sort of tiered thing with the tiered plan with the live TV as well. But it wasn't like no ads on live TV. All live TV has ads, but it just, when you watched content that was part of their library, you could get it without ads. So you just had to pay a few dollars extra.
So since you have access to Disney Plus, have you watched The Mandalorian?
Oh yeah. I just saw also a new season's coming out next month.
Yes, and have you watched the trailer for it?
I have not.
I finally watched it this afternoon. I had to watch it twice back to back.
Oh, wow.
It just, it's good. It doesn't show much of anything at all, but what little bit it shows is, I'm ready for it.
Cool. So watching The Mandalorian, I thought it was a good show. And I think Jon Favreau is just, I think he's just going to keep putting out stuff that's just really good. Iron Man 2 were great. Like his first movie was one of my, a movie that I really enjoy. I don't know if you see Swingers. And so I feel like he's just, I feel like we're just going to keep seeing good stuff from him. But started when I started The Mandalorian, I was like, this is good. I feel like it is what I wish the last three, or I didn't even watch all of the last three movies, but I feel like it's like what the sort of direction that trilogy, the 7, 8, and 9 should have gone, or it should have been something more like The Mandalorian rather than what it was or what it is.
So we could easily do 3 or 4 episodes on those in general. I will give an overarching statement though, because I feel like I kind of have to state my position. I enjoyed 7 mostly because it felt like what I remembered Star Wars feeling like. It wasn't the first 3. We'll just put it that way. I even enjoyed 8, even though there were a lot of things that I had problems with. And I think the continuity between 7, 8, and 9 suffered dramatically since they kept changing directors. And it was obvious that they didn't agree on direction. And so for the most part, I enjoyed 9. It felt like a Star Wars film. And to me, that's what I want. I don't care as much about the plot itself as much as how I feel watching it. And so the feeling was, yes, this feels like Star Wars. Yes, it's enjoyable. Yes, I have to suspend any logical or rational thought throughout the entire film, or I'm not going to enjoy it. And that's just kind of the recipe for how I sit and watch anything in the Star Wars universe prior to The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, to me, feels like taking what I like about the Star Wars universe and giving me a good, proper show, if that makes sense.
It does. I think what I'm about to say is going to be contradict what I just said, but I think so. I remember watching The Force Awakens in the theater and really enjoying it, especially seeing the Millennium Falcon fly again. That to me was like probably one of the best parts of that movie. When they first flew that craft again, I thought that was so great.
Chewie, we're home.
Yeah, but I think the whole trilogy has just I've lost favor with the whole franchise, even including the original 3, the Star Wars, and Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. And part of it is the prequels were just so bad. I mean, there's like the duel, the fight where they have the duel of the fates between it was Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan against Darth Maul. That was just so great. It's brilliant. It's as good as the last 15 seconds of or the 15 seconds of Darth Vader in Rogue One. I mean, those bits and pieces I love, but I feel like the prequels just sort of just made me less interested in the franchise. And like even to the point where I'd say like I like that 2009 Star Trek movie better than I like any Star Wars movie right now. That it was just so well done, and even the one that followed it, where Benedict Cumberbatch is Khan, that was also a really good movie, and I feel like those ended up being better movies than the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I would agree from a filmmaking standpoint. I think where I disagree is predominantly with the weight of what the franchise carries, and so what the feeling it evokes is. And that's really, I think, the biggest difference. I think it's why you have so many arguments between Star Trek and Star Wars fans, if you pay attention to, the really strange people out there. I'm sure that'll generate hate mail if we ever get listeners. But Star Trek in general has always tried to provide more of a cohesive storytelling experience. Or at least it seems that way, it feels that way. Star Wars never has tried to do more than evoke an emotional response to enjoying a story. Otherwise, if it was ever designed to actually provide a cohesive narrative, it has failed on so many fronts that it's just not worth picking apart. So the only thing that you can really point to then is from just a really high level perspective. You had the thoughts of, I want to evoke a feeling of the ancient samurai, and I want to evoke a feeling of what it would be like to watch a good Western. I don't really care where it falls flat, because I want to dazzle you with everything you feel from what you see and hear. And I think that's the part that makes it so intriguing, but also makes it so easy to spot something like the prequels, where it was just too embroiled in attempted storytelling that fell flat, instead of what we had grown to love from the original trilogy, which was just give me something entertaining that makes me feel like a gunslinger or an outlaw or a samurai. Take your pick. Whichever one you identify with, there was something for you.
And then put me in a cockpit of a dogfight.
Yeah.
I think that's the Mandalorian got all of that right.
They did. Very much so. And I've been so... I don't know if blown away is even an accurate description. I love how flawed the character is, and yet how good the character is. Just talking about the Mandalorian, and then you start adding in how great they did with building up a and desire to see secondary and supporting characters. It was a big deal when what was his name? The one played by, I think it was Brolin. The I Have Spoken guy. I can't remember the character name. Anyway, but I really felt sad at the point that his character was killed off.
Yes. Yeah.
Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, I guess. But anybody that's going to listen to us, if they haven't watched The Mandalorian, they deserve to have spoilers. And then, to couple that with creating this baby, who the official character is the child, just in case you hadn't noticed it somewhere. But creating this character that is so endearing and so full of personality and doesn't utter a single bit of dialogue.
Yeah. There were I would say I came relatively late to The Mandalorian because it was I didn't start watching it until after the Baby Yoda memes kind of faded away. But yeah, I mean, just I remember there are actors that make millions of dollars that cannot evoke the kind of emotion that the child did, and it's a puppet. It doesn't say anything. It's just, I mean, it's good writing. I mean, good writing that supports that puppet. But yeah, I remember it reminds me of the movie Up. It's like there are so many Hollywood movies that try to evoke the emotion. Like the whole movie tries to evoke the emotion that the first 10 minutes of Up evokes and cannot do it. And there's no dialogue.
Yeah. So that part of one of the things that I love about the trailer, you'll have to go watch it at some point. And this won't give anything away anyway, but there's one scene where the Mandalorian and the child are in, I guess it's an underground fight club of some sort. But anyway, the guns get drawn, and the Mandalorian taps something or activates something on his wrist. You know, obviously getting prepared to attack. And the child notices it, reaches out and hits a button on the carrier, and a blast shield covers him and encloses him. That scene alone was just the perfect encapsulation of, yes, I'm ready to see more of this.
Oh, the child is hilarious. They do so well. They do so well. I was gonna say, I think one of the things at this point now, I've gotten into my head that I want to see a Quentin Tarantino directed Star Wars movie, and I'm never gonna get it. And so I'm just like, unless you're if you can, I don't want to watch another. I probably will watch another Star Wars movie, but it's like, if you can't be as good as The Mandalorian and you're not going to give me a Quentin Tarantino directed Star Wars movie, there's no point for me.
I think we might get more than what you think we might get. Have you paid attention to any of the info surrounding other Star Wars related projects at all?
No, sir. I'm completely unqualified.
So the one thing that has been confirmed, Ewan McGregor will be reprising his role as Obi-Wan Kenobi in a Disney Plus series focusing on him. That I haven't paid attention to any other details. I'm on board with it, just knowing that he's going to come back and reprise the role. There is a Rian Johnson. Is it Johnson or Johnston? I think it's Johnson. Either way, so the director of Episode 8, so that would have been The Last Jedi. He is still on board to direct his own trilogy that is separate from what we know of as the Star Wars saga or the Skywalker saga. Yeah. And given his proclivity for good storytelling, I'm curious what that's going to be. So I have some hopes for that. And then there's confirmation of a Disney Plus series revolving around the High Republic era, which would have been prior to the original trilogy for sure. I think it would take place prior to the prequel trilogy as well, during the era when the Jedi were at kind of their full power or scope, or at the peak of their existence as an organization. And I don't know any real details about that one either, but those are the projects that I know have been talked about and confirmed. And depending on how it goes, yes, you're not going to get a Tarantino Star Wars film at this point, but just knowing that they have that kind of depth in the pipeline, it's not that far-fetched to think that there might be some darker takes on the universe in general in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think you're right, and maybe it's the the sentiment I was getting at is this the Skywalker saga has, I guess, become increasingly less interesting to me. But the universe itself is good, and now that they've gotten that out of the way, they are no longer. They sort of now have a clean slate now that they've completed that saga. So good thing, the folks that are actually over at Disney making sure we get good Star Wars content and making sure we get like good Marvel content are actually really, really smart people. They're not slouches over there. They know what they're doing. They're gonna come up with a formula, and they're just gonna keep churning things out. And if the Marvel Cinematic Universe is anything to as any indicator of what they can do, they're gonna keep using the same formula, but not overplay it. Like I've used Toy Story as an example, where if you've seen one Toy Story, you've seen them all. Now, they're fun to watch. Don't get me wrong. They're all fun to watch because they have different jokes. They have different ways of making you laugh, but it's basically the same story every time. And I feel like what we got from Marvel was different stories, different characters and different stories. And it was a lot of fun. And I hope Star Wars, I guess that is to say, I'm hoping there will be hope for Star Wars, and maybe they will win over my cynicism towards the franchise. If they keep doing things like The Mandalorian, yeah, I think so. I think also that if they asked Tarantino to do a movie, he would say no, but they're not going to ask.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it doesn't really seem like it would fit with anything that he would be interested in.
I disagree, sort of, because he has a lot of throwback to the 70s, and the original Star Wars was in the 70s, and I just really would love to see what he does with a lightsaber.
Yeah, I don't know. Everything, well, everything that I like him for, I don't see him wanting to apply it in the Star Wars universe. And part of that may just be because we haven't had anything gritty enough to even come close to what he would do, I'm sure. But it doesn't seem like it doesn't mesh in my mind for some reason.
Actually, while we were talking about this, it kind of Star Wars made me think of. It's interesting to think about Disney's response to Star Wars, because it did have a response to Star Wars. The movie The Black Hole. It's from 1979.
Yeah, this is not one that I'm familiar with.
It's a fairly dark movie. It was. There's actually a really nice article. I think it was done by the Nerdist, and it documents Disney's dark decade. They had from 1975 to 1985. They released quite a few sort of movies that you would not expect Disney to release. They are much darker. This is one of them. I don't know if you're familiar with The Black Cauldron or Return to Oz. Those are a couple of others that I can remember off the top of my head that were from this sort of dark decade. But yeah, the Black Hole is on Disney Plus, and it was a response to the original Star Wars movie from '77. That movie was so incredibly popular that a whole bunch of sci-fi space movies got greenlit in Hollywood because they wanted to cash in on the popularity of Star Wars, and Disney needed one, so they shopped around for one. It's certainly not a movie that started out as a Disney movie, but it probably got somewhat tamed by Disney. But it's got some stuff in there that's like, if you're a kid and in the 70s or 80s, and you're like, hey, I'm like 8 years old. I'm going to watch this movie. It's there's some stuff that you're going to have to deal with in that movie. It was it wasn't as easygoing as what we've come to know Disney to be, and what we expected Disney to be before this period of time. But another very popular franchise that got funding because of Star Wars was Alien.
That doesn't surprise me. I was just thinking about it while you were talking about what we attribute to Disney. I remember when they purchased the rights to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I was concerned because historically Disney has attempted to keep things approachable enough, I guess, is a good way to put it. Because I wouldn't say that they've shied away from doing anything that is that cuts any group of people out, per se. But they still try to do it in a manner that keeps it approachable without a very strong divide based on age. And I think they've done a good job with most of the Marvel universe. And my emphasis there is just the larger cast groupings. So thinking of the Avengers, to me, those movies had problems, had very significant problems, and they started feeling all right, yeah, it's enjoyable to watch, but there's nothing here. It's just a bunch of quick action scenes and maybe some narrative to move the plot along. Whereas the individual story arcs, like if you look at the Iron Man movies or the Captain America movies, or you pick any one of the central characters instead of having the entire group, those have been phenomenal. And but anyway, that's a digression. I remember being concerned from just the standpoint of how can you do a comic film and have the same historical Disney tameness to make it approachable. And I think they've done a good job of kind of achieving that balance, because I don't think they've overly tamed anything that's been presented in those films, and at the same time have not necessarily gone to the extent that the comics themselves have gone and alienated any particular group of people. What will be real interesting, though, Disney did buy Fox, right? I'm not mistaken in that. Okay, so Fox, one of the Fox subsidiaries, or maybe Fox directly, somebody within that group owns the rights to Deadpool. And I know with that purchase or acquisition, Deadpool became a Disney property. And that was post-recording of Deadpool and Deadpool 2. What will be most interesting to me is whether there is a Deadpool 3, and if it follows the same vein, and if so, I will give Disney 100% props for doing what is right for the character and the story, regardless of what franchise it is, because that, to me, is the really big test.
The question is, will Disney put their if a Deadpool 3 sees the light of day, and it is what you would expect a Deadpool 3 to be based on the first two movies, will Disney put their name on it? Because historically they haven't. They started Touchstone Pictures for rated R movies, and some other movies that just didn't fit in the Disney lineup. But they didn't want to miss out on that segment of the market. So
at that point, I'm not overly concerned about it. It's more like I could care less what name you want to attribute it to. Like I'm fully on board with saying, okay, if we have a Disney property that we want this appearance, and we have a Marvel property that we want this appearance, or Lucasfilm, or Fox, or whatever. Like the subsidiaries, I'm actually on board with. It's if you own it and you still do it, even if you put a different name on it to associate that brand, I'm still okay with it.
Oh, me too. I'm just curious because like at the end, you don't see the Disney intro watching any of the Marvel movies that were made after they purchased Marvel's. You just see the Marvel Studios, but you see Disney at the in the closing credits, and I'm just it's just something it's a question typical of me. I'm curious if they stick their name on that because there are no rated R Disney movies.
Define rated R Disney movies. You mean movies that have the Disney crawl or movies that have the Disney name anywhere attached to the film instead of a subsidiary?
I think so definitely nothing with the Disney crawl. But I don't even think there's anything. I don't think they have anything that they've attached. I don't think there's any rated R movie that they've even attached their name to. None that
There may not be.
aware of.
I just wanted to make sure we make the distinction because as far as the end credits go, I don't know if I would be as adamant that there's not something that has a correlation to the Disney company somewhere in the end credits. But as far as that opening crawl or produced by or anything that makes it quite apparent, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, no, I don't even think that. I think that they created Touchstone Pictures for the rated R movies that they were going to produce and distribute, and you don't see anything. I think you have to know that Disney owned Touchstone Pictures to know that this was a Disney movie.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it goes into, and I think it's a perfect segue into the event today. Like Apple curates its brand very strongly, and Disney historically has as well. And I think you can see the benefit to that across the board, because if you look at, HBO is a good example. HBO curates its brand very well. If you look at Cinemax, though, it does not, even though it's the same ownership. Cinemax typically feels like a cheap HBO unless you're a follower of a specific series. And I don't really even know what the distinction is anymore. It used to be the whole late night might as well be adult film without being adult film series that you could find on Cinemax.
It's softcore pornography.
Yeah. Skinemax was of course, name or the way it was referred to for a reason. Nowadays, I really don't know what the distinction is, other than HBO is the one that everybody knows and trusts more, I guess.
I didn't realize HBO owned Cinemax until this moment. Yeah, I had no idea.
But going back to the specific topic, how many media organizations, or how many organizations in general, do you know that really curate their brand as well as those handful of examples? I mean, the only other one that really comes to mind is Coca-Cola, and it goes into the the whole John thought thing with the Apple event today with the clothing. I will let you introduce the thought, but that's kind of what brought it all to mind for me, is that you have Disney curating its look and appearance, and even its subsidiaries' look and appearance. Like they really make sure that everything they do has a very certain appeal to it, and they really curate the brand. Apple certainly has curated its brand. Even with acquisitions and subsidiaries, even though they haven't done much with a lot of those, look at Beats as an example, it was still curated for the short time that it lived under Apple, and I think we're in the process of seeing Beats fade away. But it was something they still paid a lot of attention to and still kept it very different from the Apple brand for the reasons that they felt they needed to keep it different. And that's something that I think has always been fascinating to me with how Disney has done all of its acquisitions. Everything still feels like its own individual thing, even though it's all Disney. I don't even know how much Disney owns anymore.
I feel like Disney started to blur the lines 10 years ago. Because they were, because I haven't, or I'll back up and say, like, I haven't quite understood the relationship between Pixar and Disney, because it seemed like Pixar was a part of Disney in the very beginning, in the mid 90s, and then Pixar went away on its own, but they never got fully away from Disney, and now they've blurred the line between Disney and, or at least Disney computer animated motion pictures and Pixar, once John Lasseter became the head of all of that the animation for both studios. At this point, I feel like the only thing different between a Disney and a Pixar movie is that the Disney movie might break out into song.
So I can actually speak to that decently. I might be semi-educated on this particular topic. Have you seen the book Creativity Inc.?
Yes.
All right, so I have a copy of it. I read it, and it's the only reason I really know as much about that difference as I do, and it was because of my interest in how someone else would portray Jobs' involvement in something that he didn't seemingly have a controlling involvement in. Because famously, Jobs had a controlling interest in Pixar.
Since the mid 80s, right?
Yeah, for quite some time.
He funded them to become a company, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. And so Pixar was founded actually as a company to provide the animation rendering engine and services to other companies. And then I think it was Lasseter who had the idea for Toy Story. It may have been a combination of Lasseter and a couple of others. That part I'm fuzzy on. But either way, Toy Story was the idea of, instead of selling and licensing what we can do, why don't we make our own thing? And they were able to convince Jobs to allow them to do it as long as they were continuing normal operations, so to speak. And so they diverted resources where they could, and et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a fascinating read. But Toy Story was created, and then a preliminary screening was given to Jobs, and he loved it. And, they talk about him liking it, and of course there being some follow-up and edits and everything else. But the idea was that at that point, Pixar was comprised of individuals who had aspirations of creating a Disney film, but they didn't want to do it with animation, hand-drawn animation. They wanted to do digital animation, computer animation. And so the whole point the whole purpose at that point became create a Disney film, but not a Disney film. So it wasn't the stylized hand-drawn animation. It was computer-generated animation, but it was still the same basic idea. And make it a good full-length feature film that really appealed to audiences and could stand on its own. And their inspiration was the idea of a Disney film. And so it's not surprising there's a strong parallel between what Pixar started as and how they became the film company they are, and what Disney historically had been. What's interesting, though, is that Pixar was able to do this really as an independent company, just small shop by comparison, because Disney had been in a rut where they weren't releasing content or films that filled that animation gap during that initial time frame. And so Pixar was able to capitalize on it at the right time. And then before Jobs' passing, one of the things that he was involved with was the negotiation of the sale of Pixar to Disney, with the requirement that Pixar animation and Disney animation would be different, yet under the same roof. Like he wanted to make sure that the Pixar identity did not go away, which is a classic Jobs move, because one of his big things was identity is everything when it comes to or brand / identity is everything when it comes to that type of merger and acquisition. And you want to make sure that something that he was involved with and built up or helped to build lasted. He wanted some sort of legacy. And so he didn't want his name attached to Pixar if Pixar was going to go away.
Well, if anything, Disney movies have become more like Pixar movies.
Yes. And I think they did a really good job under Iger, Bob Iger as the CEO of Disney. I think shared kind of a similar view where, you guys have obviously been successful doing something, and we were successful doing something, and we don't want to lose what those kind of recipes are. We just want to bring it together. And I don't know how much of that was his view and how much of it was handled under him, just 2 or 3 people removed or what. But I always got the impression that he was that type of thinker as well. That I don't want to just bring you in and assimilate you into what we already have, because there's a reason you guys were able to do what you were able to do. Let's learn from that as much as provide resources that we have.
Yeah, the whole part of bringing them in is to if you can't beat, not that they were trying to beat them, but if you can't beat them, acquire them. So.
Yeah, they certainly did that with everything else.
Yeah, they really did. They really did. It's like, well, they're making a lot of money. We should have that money, so we'll just buy them. So, but yeah, I think that clears up a lot to me. But what about? There was a period of time where I feel like Pixar and Disney distanced themselves from one another, maybe like a decade ago. Am I mistaken?
Nope, they did it first. So another thing that was interesting in the book was that a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot of the employees called out in the book were people who were disgruntled Disney animators who left Disney and went to Pixar.
Oh.
So some of it had to do with just political issues because they weren't happy with the way Disney was choosing to do things. And so there was a like-minded cadre of people who found themselves working together at Pixar. And as it goes into like the assimilation and everything else, there was a lot of strife and angst there as well, depending on who was appointed to lead that organization and when. So I think what it comes down to, if you wanted to try to summarize it, was that Pixar was filled with people who had some level of, I think animosity might be too strong a word, but it was some level of distaste for the way Disney was handling things. They saw a different way to do the same things that they wanted to do, and they felt it would allow them to do them better, and that was kind of what brought Pixar Animation Studios to life.
That makes sense.
I mean, the great disruptor anytime is just some level of dissatisfaction with the people that are leading an organization.
If, as a leader, one of your responsibilities is to make sure the talent that you've hired is heard at least, and they're requests are considered. So that makes sense. I always when talking about Pixar, I think about a criticism I've heard of Pixar that I've always found interesting, and that is that Pixar will never do anything dangerous. They've got a formula. That formula works. It's really good. They put out a lot of great content, but they're probably never going to do anything that isn't going to be a success. They'll never do something that is risky. And one of the things that I think about, or one of the things I thought about when I heard this criticism of Pixar, was the movie Planes, which is not even a Pixar movie. Planes is one that kind of like it blurs the line between Pixar and Disney. It's a Disney movie, but it's one of the movies that was released after John Lasseter became the head of Disney Animation Studios. And even though it's a Disney movie, not a Pixar movie, it is in the Cars world. So Dusty Crophopper and Lightning McQueen coexist.
There was an interesting agreement, and I don't remember all the details, but part of or one of the complicating issues was that Disney contracted Pixar for something, and Pixar was beholden to that contract to create a certain amount of content for Disney. There was a pre-existing agreement prior to Pixar being bought that did complicate the relationship from the standpoint of there are some things that are Disney movies that Pixar did. And so that's where Planes comes into play.
That brings a lot of clarity to it. But what I was going to say about Planes was there's a scene in the first Planes movie portraying like a World War II dogfight, a battle. Planes are being shot and going down into the water. Maybe an aircraft carrier or a battleship is on fire. Are you familiar? You recall the scene?
Oh yes.
It's a great scene. It's done so very well, but they're never gonna make an entire movie like that. I think it would be so interesting. It would be such a great gamble. And I feel like a lot of people would be disappointed with it because just people are just that way, and they want things to be the way things are. So I don't think we'll ever see something like that. But I think that would be. It's like my Tarantino directed Star Wars. It would be such a cool movie to see a PG. Well, I guess one of the Incredible movie was the Incredibles movie PG-13 or just PG.
It might have hit PG-13. I'd have to go look.
The first one's PG, but a PG-13 Pixar movie would be really interesting, and I feel like that scene. I would like to see a whole movie based on what I saw in that scene. I think that would be really cool.
So I think it's still possible. And the one thing that's easy to lose sight of is age of studio. Pixar is ridiculously young as far as big name players in the industry go. Disney Animation Studios has been around for quite some time in comparison.
About as old as Hollywood.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll still never see a R-rated Disney Animation Studios film, right? Like there are certain things that don't fit the brand, but it would not surprise me to see Pixar, something branded as a Pixar film, become a little bit darker with the Disney acquisition, because Disney could then say, for anything that is this, we're going to release it as the Disney brand, or maybe even Disney Pixar, and then we're going to give you guys your own license to do this. Like, and I'm not saying they would. I'm just saying that I don't think of it as impossible at this point. I think that it was impossible to imagine Pixar doing it without Disney's backing more than it is unimaginable with Disney's backing. Because if you think about Pixar pre-acquisition, I mean, they were very much a single movie at a time shop. And so everything had to be a certain level of successful or the business could implode at any given point.
Probably has turned into a habit or expectation, or just it could be just the desire. I don't think they took looking back at The Incredibles, that first one was PG, and I don't think that was a gamble at all. I think that was like it. They were going to make a superhero movie, and bad guys are going to die, and it seemed like a natural move. It didn't seem risky at all. I mean, it was a great movie, and it didn't seem risky at all. But
yeah, the only one I could point to at this point that seems like it could have been somewhat risky is Cars 2, because it doesn't fit with Cars and Cars 3.
No, there's not a lot of love for Cars 2, but I thought it was really good. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I like it a lot, and I was just thinking, like, I was saying that The Incredibles wasn't a risk. I don't even think Cars 2 was too much of a risk. I know it wasn't well received like the first one, but I don't think it was a risk. Like, I think the movie Bolt was way more of a risk than anything Pixar has put out.
Probably. I haven't actually watched Bolt. I do know the premise.
It's just it's tough to watch because it's like Pixar. It's certainly not to the level of a Pixar movie, and it's not to the level of an animated Disney movie, like a hand-drawn Disney movie.
Was that a DreamWorks production?
No, it's a Disney movie.
Okay.
So I was going to ask you about. You've been holding back. You've been saving your thoughts for Apple's event today. What?
Yeah, I was thinking we should finally get around to that. I'm not going to say I'm underwhelmed because that would be the wrong word. It feels very iterative. It feels very much like Apple's improvements to be expected year over year. But I'm far more excited about the bundling and software options than I am about any hardware. And that feels really strange to be thinking about anything I'm excited from Apple for that's not a piece of hardware.
It's weird to be excited about a service from Apple.
And it just really... So the part that I thought was really, really intriguing was the Fitness Plus service.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
It's not something I would... If we just stepped back and they didn't offer the premium bundling of the services, I would never try it because I've been a Beachbody On Demand subscriber for a while, and I can always find a workout from one of their different programs or trainers to do. And historically, I've always enjoyed Tony Horton as a trainer because I like his mentality. And so I'm more inclined to say, no, I'll stick with Beachbody even though it's more expensive because of that investment in relationship, etc. Yeah, or relationship is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. That idea of I like his philosophy, I like his approach. But Fitness Plus looked really interesting. And I think what made it look more interesting is because I have an Apple Watch. And so the integration where I could just scroll through and select a workout and I don't even have to touch my watch. And it will also start the workout there for tracking and give me the same information that I would typically glance down at my watch for on the screen. All of that is really, really cool. the price point that they advertised is well worth it if that's your only service. Because I think Beachbody, I think at this point, if you were to become a new subscriber, it's probably 25 or 30 a month. So it easily is well below what you would subscribe to kind of the known competitor for. There are other alternatives that are cheaper. But it hits the right price point, but it has this level of integration that is really fascinating. And so that is something that I'm very interested in. But if they had announced it, they had not announced the Apple One bundling program, I would never even try it.
It's really interesting to talk about Apple services, or that being the thing that I got most excited about, because historically, services has not been their strong, an area they're strong in. They get by. I mean, iCloud has gotten reliable, and that's good. I'm not afraid that iCloud is going to lose my stuff. It's not the only place my stuff exists, but I'm not afraid it's going to go away. So that's good. But to actually think, oh, wow, I will probably try News Plus. I will probably be trying Apple Arcade because it's a part of a bundle that I will eventually have, and along with fitness. And I don't even have an Apple Watch. And it's, if fitness is any better than whatever the videos that they had to learn how to play music with the GarageBand, I can't remember what that was called. If it's, marginally better than that, I could end up buying an Apple Watch. And I think fitness really lends itself well to that, because almost everybody wants to be fit. Or maybe a safer thing to say would be, there are more people that are concerned about their fitness than want to learn how to play guitar or play piano. So if you get this fitness service bundled in with something that you're already paying for, I wonder. I don't think it's like, hey, this is going to sell us more watches. It just increases the richness of the watches. But for me, it would be a reason to buy a watch.
Yeah, So I'm certainly an advocate for the watch in general. With the first version, it was kind of a novelty. I did have the first iteration. I liked it, but I didn't really care too much about having it either way. It was more, what I liked about the first iteration was, if I received something that I had filtered as an important notification, then it would tap my wrist and then it could look at it, and I could just ignore the phone other than checking it every so often. Like it was more that filtering mechanism where anything vitally important, I'm going to know, hey, I need to check this, versus that kind of constant glancing at the phone thing that we used to do.
Yeah, it's a lot less intrusive. I still do.
But it didn't take too long. It didn't take long to start to realize that from a fitness perspective, I liked having data. However good or bad the data was, as long as it was consistent, that made a difference to me. And so the health pieces started to be more interesting, even though I didn't do a lot with it. It was just kind of, it was something to be mindful of and something I appreciated having. With this year and my renewed focus on being more fit, it's been absolutely indispensable. Okay, there's no way I could do what I have. Well, I shouldn't say no way. I probably would not have been able to do what I did without the feedback of having all the information available to me as a result of having the watch and the tracking.
Well, one of the things that the watch does is it gamifies personal fitness, and it plays on the propensity to want to complete something, if there's an arbitrary award for a thing that's relatively easy to attain, most people are going to do that. And so, I mean, it ends up, it's kind of like, well, I don't know if it's kind of like, but it makes me think of how slot machines are designed to keep you playing and playing and playing, and the idea. It's not even. At some point, I don't even think the idea of a big payout is what keeps people playing slot machines. It's just getting that thing. We see it with iOS games. The worst of iOS games keep people playing because it attracts a certain desire we have to complete something or gain something or acquire resources. Just depends on the nature of the game. But I think the Apple Watch gamifies personal fitness, and so if you're halfway to filling up your rings, it's like, oh, it's noon or 1 or there's plenty of time to fill up those rings. And so people end up filling up those rings because it's a goal you can complete and it's there for you and it's not hard. And whereas if you don't know, then you end up not doing it. So I think it plays on that, and it does, feedback I've heard is that it does a really good job of keeping all of your fitness metrics well. I used to use once tried Nike Plus, and it was so frustrating to lose all the data. Like, that happened way too much. It happened once to me at the worst possible time. I was doing the Apple Wellness Challenge, and I lost all of my data. I didn't get a shirt that year because Nike Plus just wasn't good at it.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is it's not even the overall data retention. I've had a couple of minor issues, but those are more related to my proclivity to install betas and do other things that, like, I accept any level of risk to data at that point. The biggest thing I can think of from that standpoint has been that the data is synced to Apple Health, but if you don't unpair the watch before you update it or replace it or do other things, then there's a chance that your order of operations will cause you to lose historical data. So to me, that's a problem, but I don't think it's really something most people are going to encounter. Excuse me. But the big thing for me has been consistency of measurement. Let's just say that it tells me that I've burned 100 calories from X activity or whatever. The consistency of repetitive measurements seeming to be in line with previous measurements, that's the big thing that makes me feel like I can trust measurements from a year ago to today and still have an accurate representation of what I have done. So for example, if I do, let's just say I walk around the neighborhood and I burn 100 calories on a walk, and a year later, after doing whatever fitness routine, or month later, week later, it doesn't matter, if I walk around the neighborhood and I burn, say, 95 calories on the same walk, that is consistent. That could indicate, either a better cardiovascular system for me, or better fitness, or whatever the case may be, depending on how much time has gone by. But then the same can be said for the day-to-day measurements. If I do the walk today, and it's 100 calories, and I do the walk tomorrow and it's 100 calories, and I know I've exerted the same general amount of effort and everything else, like the repetitive consistency of measurement was the important thing to me. Because I don't care if it's actually 100 calories or 120. Like I'm not sitting and tracking what I expend versus what I intake versus everything else. What I want to know is that whatever device I'm using to track tracks in a consistent fashion so that the results from day to day are comparable to each other. Where I think it was the Nike Fuel, wasn't that what they called their like point system?
There were several iterations. There was Nike Plus, and then there was Nike Fuel, and then they got out of the game right before. I mean, Nike's historically worked with Apple, and they discontinued Nike Fuel Band a few months, the same year or 6 months before the Apple Watch was released.
And the big thing I remember there is that it didn't seem consistent day to day, and so I didn't feel like I could trust the feedback that I was getting from the device. And so that was the big thing for me, like how reliable or how much trust can I put in the measurements I'm given. Like the numbers may not be accurate as far as actual calories or whatever. Like if you use an elliptical or a treadmill, they'll give you the estimated calorie burn, but that's not going to be accurate for you unless you're syncing that information with the heart rate monitor and blah, 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 right? There are certain data points that you have to have in order to give you a truly accurate measurement of what your calorie burn or energy expenditure or whatever will be. And so if I can have a reliably consistent day to day and week to week and, that type of thing, then I can at least trust that if I set a goal for 500 calories that I move in a day, 500 active calories, that it's going to be measuring the same general level of intensity and expenditure day to day to reach that, and know that I'm at least doing what I need to do from that perspective, right? And I think that's a long-winded way of saying that data reliability was just a key factor.
Yeah, the Apple Watch seems to be at least the first thing that I've seen that has been reliable. I used the Nike Plus, which was an armband and a sensor in your shoe, and it was fairly unreliable, or my experience with it was fairly unreliable. And then I used the Fuel Band, was just the band that went around your wrist, no sensor in your shoe, and maybe a little more reliable, but it was very, I feel like it was very, a lot was like fudged with the units that Nike used, the fuel. So the Apple Watch seems to be like one of the better actual fitness indicators. Because before, they used to be a very niche product that you could put a band around your chest to get your heart rate and so forth. So I feel like it was like the fitness nerds were the ones who had like reliable tracking of reliable metrics.
I remember. You remember the Up band by Jawbone?
Vaguely.
I remember trying one of those and also being relatively dismayed at how inaccurate it seemed to be. I think certainly the Apple Watch has been the most accurate that I've used. And I did have a Scotch, however you pronounce it, heart rate monitor that the readings I would get for it were identical to what I would get from the watch, which to me just lended even further credence that the watch was as accurate as it said it was. because at that point I didn't have to worry about a chest strap. I think the Fitbit is relatively accurate, but I know in conversations with people that they see fluctuations in accuracy day to day as well. That it's still not as good as the Apple Watch. I don't know that there is a current generation competitor if you are looking at general all-day tracking and not something specific to running or, a very activity-geared device. And what I mean by that is I know Garmin makes a couple of watches that are really good for runners, but they're not even remotely close to as good as the Apple Watch for, a rowing workout or a high-intensity interval training, cross-training, take your pick. So if general fitness is what you're after and you're wanting to track metrics related to your workouts and it spans a variety of things, I can't think of a good competitor to the Apple Watch.
Yeah, I think, I don't think Apple set out for the Apple Watch to be a fitness device. I think it was part of the feature set, it was part of the feature set from day one, but it's something that the consumers have. It's the feature set that consumers have said this is really good at what it does, and I want more of it. And so Apple's just they've been putting more health related features into the Apple Watch, and it's the only consumer device I've heard of that provides this level of quality for health related and fitness related metrics and features. So
Emily and I were talking about this earlier. It's also the only Apple product that has been shaped by the community instead of being shaped by Apple.
That's so true. It's so true. I mean, it's the first category of product that was released after, or first and only category released after, or product category released after Steve Jobs' death. So I don't think that has anything to do with it, but it might.
Yeah, I guess it depends on whether you start classifying AirPods and HomePod as separate categories.
Well, headphones have existed. Apple has made speaker systems before, so I think the HomePod itself is just they were making a product, and then they when they started designing that product, there wasn't a cylinder that you could talk to, and then before they released their speaker, all of a sudden you can there are cylinders on the market that you can talk to and they do things. So they had to throw Siri into it. I would not have expected Siri to be part of the initial design. I think it was a feature that came after the market changed. But those speakers and headphones existed, since the iPod. So,
yeah, I'm just making sure I understood what you meant by category. You meant entirely new.
Yes,
not a derivative work. Yeah,
not a new product, but a new product line.
Yeah, the announcements for the watch today were kind of what I expected, which is not bad by any means. It's just that how much can you do in a year that you can't kind of predict where you're going, right? The only thing I feel like I'm missing, I went from the original watch to a Series 4. And so the only thing that I felt like I was missing prior to today's announcement was the always-on display, which is huge. I mean, it's my one big complaint with the watch. But I didn't feel like that was a reason for me to upgrade from a Series 4 to a Series 5. even though there are other improvements, it's just that's the big feature that I would be getting, that I would notice. I'm not sure that I feel compelled to upgrade with a combination of an always-on display and blood oxygen level readings, but it is a compelling idea because of my more recent renewed interest in fitness. Will I get a Series 6? Probably not. The watch is probably the one device that I've been very conservative about how often I upgrade. As long as it can run the current OS and it gives me the workout data that I need, or the fitness data that I feel like I need, I'm pretty happy with the watch without making a change. And part of it is because the software update process and the pairing process and the tethering of a watch to a phone, until we get to remove that tether and the phone becomes something that augments the capabilities of the watch instead of being required to unlock all of the capabilities of the watch, I'm just not as inclined to adopt multiple iterations until mine dies or can no longer run the current OS.
Well, we're on step one of disconnecting it from the phone.
Yeah, we're definitely on that path, and I'm looking forward to that.
I was going to say, I think that's going to be a faster path than disconnecting the phone from the computer.
Probably, but I think it's more out of necessity than any real desire to do so. I mean, if you think about what are you going to target now, I can't imagine there are that many people who are interested in the watch who haven't bought one. Why would any of them want to upgrade from whichever model they have? It's going to be a very specific feature or a very specific function of the OS that drives that upgrade. However, if you get to a point where I could give the watch to a kid, whatever age bracket, but let's just say a teenager, I don't have to give them a phone. I can just give them the watch. They can still use it. It still does everything that the watch can do. Even if I have the cellular model, can even make and receive calls, and I don't have to give them a phone. Well, that's pretty nice.
Yes, I was going to say the cellular model is required for that.
Yeah. But currently if you get a cellular model, it's still tied to a phone number that's attached to your primary phone. Like even though with the Series 4 watches, when I replaced both Emily's and mine, I went with the cellular model. Didn't really have a compelling reason to. The choice was driven from, there was one instance where Emily went and ran an errand and left her phone, and I actually needed to get information from her. And so that drove, all right, well, fine, we'll just get cellular models and we'll pay for it even though we don't use it, and et cetera, because at least then I can still reach you in the event that I need information for something. And it's never been an issue again, so it's kind of ridiculous. But it's one of those things where I was willing to go ahead and buy the cellular model and eat that cost because it relieved some of the anxiety with some issues with not being able to get in touch as needed. And then, of course, now at this point, it doesn't matter again. But it was important at the time, and so it influenced the purchase, is what it comes down to. With a newer model, if they could actually uncouple it completely, and it could have the shared phone number without having to be linked to the phone, it could be its own device, and and in this case Verizon could just say, well, we'll just send calls to this number to both the phone and the watch that you've told us to forward it to in addition to. Well, that'd be great, because then it wouldn't require the pairing process and the linking and everything else. It could just be tied to an iCloud account that handles whatever syncing of data that I want it to sync, And I think we're definitely going to get there, and we're going to get there quickly, but I think it's going to be driven out of the need for, I have a computer and I have an iCloud account, but I don't have an iPhone, but I want to watch. I think that subset of people is what's going to drive market demand for the ability to do something like that. And I think they're going to have to accelerate plans to uncouple them in order to maintain growth because of that market.
Well, they certainly did that with the iPod, and I don't see them not doing it with the watch. I think it's just a matter of, Apple has a baby. They need to watch that baby grow and mature, and then they'll let it be its own thing. Let it go and do more.
Well, it's also easy to point to, the first iteration of the watch really couldn't do anything.
Right. No, the phone was absolutely necessary.
Yeah. And so if you think about the baggage from a development perspective coming over from that, like it's kind of amazing that we've reached the point that we have where it can be a computer in and of itself and run some of its own apps natively already. And it's that small, and it still does these other things too. Like it's when you actually remove yourself from it a little bit and see how far you've come in so few iterations, it's actually kind of marvelous. It's just a matter of the software dependency between watch and phone limits it far more now than you would have thought it would have when it launched.
Oh, no. To get that small of a computer inside, to make that small of a computer, I get it. And it's just, it slowly has to grow up. Like the phone had to be connected to the computer for a long time because the back end syncing architecture wasn't in place, or the infrastructure wasn't in place, and so you had to connect it to the computer for that reason. It was complete. Once you got it up and running, it was not a problem to not have a computer. You just needed the computer to get things up and running, and most things after that it was self-sufficient. But the watch relies on the phone, more, and it will slowly step away, or not slowly, but I think it'll be faster that it will step away from or you won't. I think its transition from not requiring a phone will be faster than the phone not requiring a computer. But it's on its way.
Yeah, seamless over-the-air updates were such a great thing when they finally happened.
Oh, and then when they added Delta updates.
Yeah.
And then when, I think for me it was when it was more convenient to restore from an iCloud backup than to restore from an iTunes backup. That's when I stopped connecting it to my computer. And a lot of it had to do with keychain, iCloud keychain.
That was definitely a huge benefit, or a big game changer. I still will connect mine to the computer and do a full backup when I am installing a beta, but that is the only time. Like there's never any other reason for me to do it. And it's not that I don't trust the iCloud backup at all. It's that I want a local backup in the event that I have issues with the beta installation process.
Yes, because the beta can hose your iCloud backup. So
yeah.
I was going to say the thing that I got really interested in today was the updates to the iPad Air. And I found them so interesting because I am hoping that we'll see similar updates to the iPhone, particularly the form factor and maybe a Touch ID sensor coming back to the iPhone.
I'm torn on the latter part. So we'll start with the form factor. I 100% agree. Like I cannot wait for squared edges, and let's get away from this rounded BS that is on every flippin' phone nowadays. I don't understand. All right, I guess I understand to an extent. Most people prefer to feel a soft, rounded corner in their hand than a hard edge. But I'm not most people. I would rather feel like the phone is not going anywhere and be able to set it up on its side to take a picture without a tripod or something else having to hold it and know that it's stable than to deal with the rounded edge crap.
Even with a tripod, it goes better in a tripod with the flat edges.
Yes.
I don't know anybody that didn't love the iPhone 4 or 4S form factor. That was, and even like 5 and 5S, because those were still, I mean, I still like the glass back on the 4 and the 4S better than the aluminum, but...
Aluminium.
No, we're not British. They spell it differently. They spell it like aluminium. But yeah, I don't know anybody that didn't like the 4S, 5S feel. I remember like some criticisms of the chamfered edges, but it was like, whatever. I want to see those come back, and when I say touch ID and the sleep wake button, I want to be clear that Touch ID in addition to Face ID.
Yes, and that alleviates what I was going to kind of mention. Like I do not want to ever have to go back to Touch ID alone, because I drastically prefer Face ID, but I do really like having the option of both, especially in light of the limitations with Face ID that we have been subject to as a result of the pandemic, and something that I know that people in the medical profession have dealt with for I don't know how long. I mean, as long as they've had to wear masks, so forever. But I get it. There are a lot of professions where Touch ID makes a lot more sense in your day-to-day because your face is obstructed. And you don't even have to look at medical community. I mean, you could look at anybody that has to cover some portion of their face for protection, whether it's protection from, virus, which is most common in our minds, but you think about a welder or somebody who is wearing a face shield or something. Like there are plenty of different, there are plenty of different ways where I can see Touch ID making a lot of sense. So Touch ID in addition to Face ID, I'm 100% on board with. I just don't want to lose Face ID. I love Face ID compared to Touch ID for 90% of the time.
I totally agree. I think Face ID has been one of the best features that they've added to the iPhone. I remember when they first announced Face ID in the iPhone 10. I thought it was gimmicky, but no, it's really cool. It's really good, and along with it, the notifications that appear on my lock screen are hidden until I unlock the phone, and I think that's a great feature, because before that it was anybody could see the notifications that were on screen. And it just added another layer of security. And with that, there's also the awareness feature. So when you're looking at something and the phone is aware that you're looking at it because of the Face ID sensors, I think that has also been a really nice feature that was added to it. So I'd like to see both, because especially now that we wear masks more often, it'd be nice to be able to unlock my phone without having to use the passcode and not have to sneak a peek at my phone. My guess, though, because it's already ready to go in an iPad that's shipping on Friday, is that it was probably going to be there anyway for various reasons. And I want to say it might be fortuitous that it's happening with this year, or happening this year If we get phones this year, supposedly next month, I would expect that was already planned if that feature makes it to the phone.
Yeah, my my concern is I wonder if it's not. So, what the iPhone SE? Did they still have a home button on it? Correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So the SE and everything up to the 10 still has a home button. So my biggest concern is, were they planning to put this in all models, or were they planning to replace the home button with this particular variant of Touch ID and keep Touch ID, but the Pro models still rely on Face ID?
Well, I think the SE is the only iPhone that has a home button now. The 11 and the 11 Pro both have Face ID, and the 10R has Face ID. I don't think the 8 is not being sold anymore.
Yeah, and this just goes to show my ignorance on anything that's not the current top of the line model. And it's just because I historically, with my trends, I'm after whatever the best I can get from a photo perspective is. And so, of course, this past iteration, it was the 11 Pro. And so that's what I went with, because that had the best camera system. And even though it's not my primary camera, that's what drives my playing with the newer phones as opposed to any of the other technologies in general.
Yeah, so if you go to apple.com, the only phone you can buy with Touch ID is the SE. All the models that did have Touch ID have been discontinued. I'm sure you can probably get it through the channel partners, but yeah, the SE is the only one with Touch ID.
So I could actually see a world where the SE is the only one with this particular new Touch ID sensor, and everything else continues with Face ID alone.
So the SE has the old Touch ID sensor. It has the home button.
Right. What I'm saying is that I could see in an October event a new SE being released that's full screen, similar design to the iPad with the integrated sleep-wake Touch ID button, and not seeing that new Touch ID button that we see in the new iPad Air hit any other device, any other iPhone device.
But I think that's unlikely, because the SE was it was updated recently. Maybe early this summer, because if you go to Apple's website, it still has the new badge on it.
Yeah, it was early this year.
Yeah.
But think about where the phone is faltering. Like, most people in the U.S. tend to not have a problem buying above the SE mark from a price point perspective. But overseas markets, they've seen significant slumps in sales for not having a lower priced full screen device.
Yes.
So it depends on what influenced the decision to create that integrated Touch ID and sleep-wake button. And we won't know this until we see whatever they decide to announce. All I'm saying is that I could see a potential scenario play out where we don't see a combination of Touch ID and Face ID in the same device.
Yeah, I think so. I think that before seeing the updates to the iPad Air, I would have 100% agreed with you on that. I would have thought only now does it make sense to have both Touch ID and Face ID on the same device, because so many more people are wearing masks. But because the iPad Air has Touch ID in the sleep-wake button now, I feel like maybe that'll be in. They were planning to put that in the phones as well, or maybe even the top-end phone, and I would, if that was the plan, then they're lucky, because so many people want that feature now that didn't want it 6 months ago, or so many more people want that feature now than 6 months ago. So I think it will eventually come regardless, but if it's this year, it's not because people are wearing masks. They just got lucky with it. I don't know.
Yeah, so for full disclosure, I agree. The only reason I'm arguing it is just because I could see from a roadmap perspective, it may have been something that was, let's get the SE at a competitive level to make it attractive as an option, which would be basically take the iPad Air as the example. I mean, it's the lowest entry point iPad. It had a previous generation Touch ID sensor button, home button, and in order to get rid of the extra non-screen space on the front, the integrated sleep-wake Touch ID button sensor combo was developed. I didn't see anything about the iPad Pro, unless I just missed it.
No, nothing.
So it could easily be that it was developed as a way to make the entry-level devices more appealing for those people who really wanted the more or less full-screen front appearance, but didn't want to lose Touch ID.
Yeah, it also differentiates it from the Pro line and maybe a less expensive component. Apple loves those margins.
I'm sure it's a less expensive component. There's no way in my mind you could pack the number of sensors needed for Face ID in that small area and not be more expensive than whatever sensors are required for Touch ID.
Yeah. The only thing that I wonder about, because it's not mentioned, is it as secure? The assumption would be that it is as secure as the old Touch ID sensor, but they certainly didn't make a point of saying it's more secure. So, maybe that it's as secure, and that's the most security you can get from a fingerprint sensor. I'm curious about the level of security, and it's only because it's a smaller surface area that you're touching.
Yeah, I certainly am as well. And what I really hope is the initial impression where we see this particular sensor across the board in conjunction with Face ID for those devices that have Face ID. Just because to me it makes sense. Because you could then provide more secure combinations depending on the nature of the data. If you go back to the transition to 64-bit processors, I remember thinking at the time that the only reason it made sense to me was to force more encryption and cryptographic related processes to make things more secure so that you could open the door to like a digital wallet or something of that nature. And that did play out. To me, a combination of multiple biometric sensors for specific interactions, like if you were doing more health-related data and synchronization between you and your doctor, for example, it would be nice to know that it's even more secure than what Face ID alone or Touch ID alone would provide if you could authenticate with multiple biometric methods or have it encrypted and transmitted as a result of some algorithm devised from multiple inputs like that. I could see where it could become a thing that would be vitally important to certain interactions. And so I would love to see both methods available for the higher end devices just out of the gate. And then really talk up the security and privacy aspects based on whatever you're devising for those use cases around, hey, this is a big benefit to having more than one authentication method, and this is why. I just don't necessarily think that's on the roadmap for any time real soon. I think that's going to be a 3 to 5 year, see how the technology allows other things to happen game.
Yeah, it's certainly a 3 to 5 year map, but maybe that was something from 3 years ago. No, I doubt it. But I don't know. I'm hoping, because there were other things that were shown today that I just want to channel into what the next iPhone is going to be. And the other one was the blue. The rumors are there will be a blue iPhone, or like a blue iPhone Pro, kind of like there was a green iPhone Pro, and it's that blue that the Apple Watch Series 6 has. It's a pretty cool blue. It'd be a reason why I wouldn't buy black this year.
Yeah, I'll have to. I saw the pictures. I'll have to look at one in person and see what I think of it. I don't dislike it. I don't know that I'm pulled toward it. Like I didn't dislike the green that they did, but it still wasn't something that I wanted.
I almost wanted the green, and like the few times I saw it in person, I was like, oh, that's really cool. But the very last time I saw it in person, I was like, nah, I wouldn't get the green.
Yeah, I feel like I just need to see that blue in person if it happens.
See, I think I would buy the blue sight unseen.
Well, that's the beauty of their choice and color palettes they do provide, right?
Yeah. The only other thing I was hoping for today that didn't happen was I was hoping to hear about the rumored over-the-ear headphones, replacing the Beats headphones.
I think the rumor was AirPod Studio or something to that effect.
Something like that.
Yeah, I'm especially with this endeavor, I'm at least curious about another good set of over-the-ear headphones. I've realized I'm using a pair of V-Modas, and they're good. I have no complaints about their quality, but I'm realizing that they are not as isolating and comfortable long-term as I would like. Like I feel like the ear cuff itself is just a little bit small for my ears. And so after an hour and a half or so, I have to kind of shift them a little bit to make them feel comfortable to wear for a little bit longer and that kind of thing. I feel like I need a different set of over-the-ear headphones that are more suited to my ear shape and size.
I've long wanted to see Apple do some over-the-ear headphones, especially when they bought Beats. I was working at Apple when the Beats were first released, and it was briefly an Apple exclusive, and it was actually manufactured by Monster, and Beats ended the relationship with Monster and manufactured their own headphones. And the thing that I love about them is there's some cachet that they have based on their name. It's a label, it's a thing. I've owned 2 pairs, and they're just too bassy. There's just too, like, I don't listen that. I listen to some of the music I listen to lends itself to having that much bass, but it just made the music just a little too fuzzy and not punchy enough. And I feel like Apple would really focus on good sound quality from some over-the-ear headphones. Like the $29 comes with your iPhone, comes with your iPod headphones are pretty good. Like for $29, they're pretty good. And the drivers in the AirPods, even better. And so I'd love to see what they would do with a set of studio headphones.
Yeah, I would too. I've been really happy with the AirPod quality.
Even the iPod Hi-Fi that they did 15 years ago, that was one of the best sounding speakers. And I feel like Apple's doing a disservice by not having like a huge speaker lineup. And I don't think that they will have Apple Beats. I don't think that's going to be a thing, but I do think that Beats is being phased out for a studio headphone that's Apple branded. And quite honestly, in my head, I see them as being almost all white with the Apple logo on each ear, and I think that'd be pretty cool.
Well, I think it's a pretty good indicator having AirPods and AirPods Pro. Like to me, there's no reason for the AirPods moniker to exist across multiple products if you weren't planning to expand it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, and I hope it's this year.
To me, that would be the kind of thing that you would launch next to an iPhone, though, not next to an iPad or a watch.
Yeah, man. Maybe they'll also do an update to the HomePod as well.
I would like to see that, just because I think the HomePod is a really intriguing piece of tech. It just doesn't fit into anything I would use, so I don't have one because it's not worth the cost to me to buy one to have it to play with as a toy when it doesn't fit into a use case that I need or have. But I wouldn't. That's not to say that I want to see it go away. Like I do think it's a pretty significant engineering feat and technological advancement for sound quality in general. It's not as good as my multiple speaker setup.
Right. I was going to say, I think everybody has a use case for it, and then that use case goes away when you look at the price.
Yeah.
And if the price point that they sell one of them for, you could get two for, maybe that use case expands. I'm certainly very interested in them, but I would prefer to spend that kind of money on something else. And so I don't think they should stop. I think there are some things that are ultimately flawed about it, which is why, one, that's why it's too expensive, and two, the fact that in 20 years you may not be able to use it as a speaker. Like speakers that are 20 years old now, you can. That makes that price point even harder to swallow.
Yeah, I would be far more inclined to try it out especially in the office, if I could get two of them as a stereo pair for the current price point.
Yeah, I mean, the only person I've heard talk about them from having used them said they're really great as a pair. Like good as a single speaker, but like pretty amazing as a pair. So I would really love to get a pair, but there are just too many things that make me say no. I don't have enough disposable income for that kind of purchase, or it's just not my comfort zone.
Yeah, I understand. I agree. Was there anything else from the event today that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I have to, because we made mention of it earlier. I have to share my thought, and that was that I'm fairly confident that every presenter and every actor in the videos today all had brand new clothes on. Shoes were brand new, pants were brand new, shirt was brand new, everything was brand new. Maybe the accessories were not brand new, but it was really the shoes that made me notice that. And so I've took that thought further and thought, I noticed that all of the third-party developers that were in short or in clips of a video all have black on, and those clothes might not have been new, but they were probably had to get approval. It's like, wear something black, please send us a picture, we must approve it, don't wear it again until the day of. And then in their packet for what they were going to do, they probably sent a lint roller just to make sure.
And I did find that kind of hilarious when you sent it earlier, because it's not far-fetched at all. It goes back to the craftsmanship around the brand that we were talking about, and I could see it being as extreme as what's described. I could see it being more extreme, where Apple even said you're going to choose from these specific brands of clothing or something to that effect for what's worn. But I could also see it being looser than what we expect, but I would not bet on it being either way, because either outcome is so easy to believe that I wouldn't want to choose.
I want to think about Apple being slightly benevolent in this sort of hyper focus on presentation, and say that for every presenter that was in a video and they got to pick a set of clothes that got approved, and Apple's like, all right, they pay for them. You get a set of clothes on us for being in a video. And then, the actors are like, you wear these clothes because you're in this video. So for the actors, it's not just makes complete sense. That's what happens to actors. They go to wardrobe and they're told to wear certain clothes because they're in a certain scene. That's not only is that not far-fetched, that's probably always happened. But I think the presenters were like, hey, you got to pick this kind of clothes because, when the fitness program was introduced, the presenter was wearing all fitness clothes. It was all Nike. It's like a Nike top, and Nike pants, and Nike shoes, and they all looked nice and crisp and clean. It's mostly noticeable in the shoes. They have a partnership with Nike. They've had a partnership with Nike for a long time.
Yeah, it would have been more striking, more memorable if it had been just randomly like Under Armour or Adidas or anybody else. Like seeing Nike clothing, it could have just been like I could have attributed it to the whole idea of, well, Nike donated whatever amount toward production wardrobe over the years, and so they just pulled something that worked. If it had been anybody else, I would have thought that, oh no, they paid a significant lump sum and shipped very specific clothing that we're going to see in a fall lineup.
I would say, coincidentally, I noticed from a Facebook friend that the Apple Wellness shirt that was sent to qualified employees for 2020 did not get a Nike dry fit shirt. It is now another company that Apple, probably the same company that they use for their other retail shirts. And on that note,
yeah, I think we've exceeded our time allotment by a significant margin.
You could probably break off the whole Apple part and make it a special.
Maybe. We'll see. I feel like there was enough kind of meandering on a couple of segments that it might not be this bad overall. We'll see. If it does come down to it, I will just make the Apple piece a special.
So 2 episodes and a special. 2 episodes, a pre-episode, and a special.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why not? It's our show.
I know. I really like that. So it's like after the 5th episode, we're gonna do a best of compilation.
Yeah. And then we'll do a special holiday edition.
Holiday edition for Halloween.
For whatever the timing works out to be, it doesn't matter. It's just a holiday edition.
Oh, don't even say what holiday it is. This is the holiday edition. But you got to do it 6 months away from Christmas, so it's clearly not the Christmas holidays. So,
well, yeah, because that has to be its own show.
Yes. That show will have. That show should be the Scotch show.
We may not make it that far before we have the Scotch show. All right. I don't have anything else. Well, have a good one.
Bye. You too. Bye.